What is the grossest thing someone has openly told you that they do regularly? Knew a guy in the army who would go to Walmart, buy the cheapest women's thongs, and wear them during morning PT at a gym. Said he would even take a dump and not wipe, just to get them dirty and smelly. Then he would pose as a woman online, and horny old men would pay him anywhere from $50 to $500 a pair. These men were smelling a man's sweaty ass thinking it was a lady. I like the entrepreneurial spirit in this guy. Working at a bar 25 years ago, coworker told me he had whacked off in the girls' bathroom and smeared his load on the door handles, and got off on it at home about how many women touched his jizz that night. He did it for over a year. I had to puke and got him fired that day. He is a high school teacher these days, still wondering if there's door handles to bathrooms that he uses these days. That guy should not be a high school teacher. I used to work for a small software company. Programmers would work odd hours, but as long as their projects were completed on time, management didn't care. One of the women in support had mentioned to me that when she would arrive in the morning, often her desk was not the way she left it. She said some of the other women in support had complained about the same thing. Management put a hidden camera in her office at night and caught one of the weirder programmers sitting naked in her chair, winking, and then wiping his jizz on her phone handset and keyboard. Police were called, and he eventually ended up doing time for it. Wow, that's very gross. I knew a guy who regularly wore diapers. He didn't have any medical issues that would require him to do so. He'd regularly relieve himself around others and would refrain from changing said diaper after doing so. He'd keep the diapers in his room, multiple trash bags worth, because he was too embarrassed to take them to the dumpster. What in the goddamn duck? That was my reaction when I learned about it. He told me about wearing the diapers, but it was his roommates who filled me in on the rest. Guy on my first boat used to ejaculate on his belly, then pull the waistband of his skivvies up and squeegee it into his shorts. Then he'd just carry on with his day, undies all nutted up. My ex did this until someone on the train near him complained to the person next to them that it stinks of cum on the train. Just reading through all of these makes me wonder about people I know or work with who do weird stuff, and I just don't know about it yet. Well, just had a former coworker get arrested for 13 counts of CP, so there is that. About 8 years ago, I had the same thing happen to me. The dude went missing and management claimed not to know anything. I was concerned over an upcoming vacation I had, and I was in charge of the department he'd run. I went, came back, no sign or news about him. I got into an accident and was out for months. Got back to work. Guy was still disappeared. The first thing I was asked by a manager is if I heard anything from the guy. A lady from the clothing department told me she heard it was for CP, but that's a big accusation, and I just didn't want to peddle that sort of rumor. Well, since my accident was a crime, I learned more or less how to search logs for court cases. Nothing came up until I thought to just Google the guy's full name and federal case. Found it, read the affidavit saying his home was raided, and a drive was found containing about 30 to 40,000 pictures. The messed up part is that every odd thing about the dude suddenly made sense. The real part is that he worked and was in charge of the toy department, and before I started working, there was more than likely the guy who would dress up as Santa. Didn't see anything about it on the news until just last year when I saw his face on an article detailing his case. I guess they called the store to get a character statement on him without specifying the crime, and the person who answered told them that he was good with kids. An old friend of mine once told us that he winks while taking a shit. He said it gives twice the pleasure. Another friend hearing this immediately said it's true. I remember listening to a late-night radio talk show, Loveline, I think, and a guest called in saying that he did that so often that every time he tried to actually have sex with his GF, he'd have to take a shit. I worked with a guy in his mid-20s who had a room at his parents' house. He kept complaining about how his mom was always on him to clean his room because the smell was leaching into the hallway. I told him, then just clean the room. How bad could it be? He proceeds to tell me about the handful of piss jugs he's collected in his room. Apparently, he gets high on edibles and is too afraid to leave, so he uses those instead. I asked, are they at least capped? He just shrugged and said, nah, different story, but same guy. He also told me about his fingernail and toenail table that needed to be vacuumed off because there was no more room left on it. He never did it before, it's a fairly recent thing. Guy I know was in rehab for alcoholism. Been sober over 60 days now. Really proud of him. But he also had a terrible diet. It's the I don't eat vegetables diet. He took a shit so big and hard he resorted to physically grabbing the shit with his fingers and pulled it out because he couldn't push hard enough. In the end, he gave himself an prolapse. Instead of going to the doctor, he just sanitizes himself to try and push his anus back in every time he showers. He has a better diet now. I don't know if he got his fixed though. I regret reading this thread. I blame myself for learning how to read. Ignorance is bliss. They don't clean up cat barf. Instead, they'd let their dog eat it. That was until the dog was too old to hear the cat throw up. When that happened, they'd simply lead the dog to the cat barf and have the dog eat it then. I watched my old roommate clean up her cat's puke with my dish sponge, then put it back by the sink. She was confused as to why I was so horrified by this. I guess I'd been washing my dishes with cat puke sponges since she moved in. Her cat had a medical condition that made her puke a lot. She didn't even rinse them. When I was in the Navy, I worked with a guy who refused to take showers. The only way he would take one is if enough people complained, and someone who outranked him ordered him to go take one. He'd wear the same clothes for days on end, and when I asked him why he doesn't take showers, he told me, I just don't think I smell that bad, so I don't bother. Mind you, we were cooks, and out of everyone on the ship, we had to have the best hygiene. We worked long, ungodly hours and were bone tired at the end of the day, but no matter how tired I was, I always made time for a showier, but this man was just allergic to showers. Another guy earlier on got kicked out, and when they were going through and cleaning out his bed, after he was gone, they found a huge black rubber dildo with a fist on it that still had shit smears on it. Had another guy actively hang his sock above his pillow for all to see, you could literally see how crusty it was, and after a while, it was almost impossible to ignore the smell. My 97-year-old dad was in the Army from 50 to 52 and said that they had a guy who refused to shower, so they gave him what they called a GI shower, stripped him down and scrubbed him with a coarse push broom and floor soap. He got the message. An old coworker said he'd ejaculate into a shot glass every morning and drink it so he had a good protein intake in the morning. He was 62, he was crazy and freaky as hell. That's just protein recirculation. He needs to go get the neighbor's morning load if he wants extra. Not regularly, but in high school, we had a kid transfer from the other high school in town. I'd play Magic the Gathering with him, but not much else. He walked into the lunchroom and told a chick at my table that he was happy to meet her because he just had a sex dream about her the night before. He wasn't allowed to sit and didn't come back. Found out weeks later he wasn't transferred. He was expelled from the other school. He responded to the vice principal with a threat to bring in his shotgun. Found out many years later, after grad, that he tried to kill his father and went to prison. That's all I know now. Met a guy in college that had a fetish and finally found a girl on campus willing to share it with him. She just so happened to be the most unhygienic female I've ever come across that wasn't homeless. Someone known around campus for being smelled before being seen. Then again, so was he, so naturally they were a perfect match. His fetish is that he liked to suck on her heavily used tampons. He would openly talk about this with people like it was an everyday thing. This one is on par with the guy who pets the tapeworm peeking out of his ass. That's it for today. Make sure to subscribe for more Reddit stories.